What up, man? Have you ever had some artists that you wanted to work with and you didn't know whether you could hold your own with them or if they would respect you or whatever, and you just wanted to work with this artist so bad? Well, we're going to talk about it today. Stay tuned.
Martial Law Productions.
Yo, what it do? Welcome to the Martial Law Productions YouTube channel. I'm Big Yo, one half of Martial Law Productions. And today we're going to talk about working with artists that you are a fan of, or working with artists that you grew up listening to, or somebody that you really respect in the game. Growing up in Memphis, I can recall, like, we had our own thing. Everybody used to ask me, well, did you listen to the East Coast music or did you listen to the West Coast, and what artists did you like, this, that, and the other? But in Memphis, basically, we had all our own stuff. Like, we had all our own artists. Most of the stuff that we listened to was underground stuff. So I grew up listening to 8 Ball and MJG, Gangsta Pat, guys like Skinny Pimp, 3-6 Mafia, Project Pat, the list goes on and on. So the question is, have you ever worked with anybody that you really admired or grew up listening to? Well, for me, for the most part, I think I have worked with almost everybody that I grew up listening to, with the exceptions of a few people. But I done worked with most of the artists that I grew up listening to as a kid. And when I go back and I think about it, and about how I met these people and how they affected me and what I learned from them, it just puts me in a different mindset as far as how I handle my music now. Being big 8 Ball and MJG fan, we grew up on all the Swab House catalog. Like, everybody that was on that roster back in the mid 90s, we pretty much listened to. Like, we bumped Crime Boss, Mr. Mike, South Circle, everybody on the label. I think I had every album from that label. Basically, they came in at a time really about the music. Swab House pretty much had the South on lock. Like, they had that golden sound at the time. And one of my favorite producers, also from Memphis, T-Mix, was one of the main producers over there. But if you ask anybody in the South about Memphis rap, they can name you probably 1,000 artists. From your Indo G, Lil Blunt, Tommy Wright III, Gangsta Pat, and the list goes on. Tom Ski Mask, DJ Squeaky, Kingpin, Skinny Pimp, pretty much everybody. Through these small regions, you go to these small cities in Mississippi, Alabama, and even in Atlanta and down in Georgia, those artists spread regionally all over. So everybody was kind of familiar with that Memphis sound. So growing up, man, I was one of those kids who was just intrigued by all the music and all the different flows and the different styles that these guys had. Even though they were from different places, everybody kind of had their own swag, their own sound. Since Memphis is real cliquish, anybody who knows me or really know who I am, they know me from, I came up under the Tommy Wright umbrella. Like, we grew up, he was a little older than me, but that's how I learned how to produce and make beats and all that, because we was in his house every day just messing around, making stuff that right to this day that people are still sampling. If I'm not mistaken, Beyonce sampled one of his songs on her latest album, and that's something that we made, or I was in the studio when they made it back in 1994. So the music has always been a part of my life and a part of my journey. Being around Tommy around that time, he was starting to get a little traction underground. So I was still just trying to figure out who I was as an artist and who I was as a producer and also as a rapper. First, I started out rapping. I wasn't even producing at this time like that. But I was, I would tinker around on the equipment and make beats and stuff, and I would just leave them in the keyboard. And so, sometimes we would go to the studio and I would hear a beat that they used on one of the songs, and it would be something that I made on the keyboard. So that gave me motivation to keep going because it was something that people like to hear. Now, when I moved to Atlanta, that's when things kind of took a turn. I came here to go to school for art, graphics. I was a natural artist. If you go back, if anybody ever seen Tommy Wright Behind Closed Doors videotape, I was the guy that was airbrushing on the wall in the studio, and I'm the one that was drawing the pictures, and I was doing a lot of that back when I was younger. So when I came to Atlanta, I went to art school. I was able to meet a lot of different people through art school as well. Also, I started working for Rolling Out magazine, and that's when I really started to meet a lot of people, in the industry that I respected and I listened to. And also, a lot of people don't know, but I was one of the first people to do a magazine cover on Kanye West. His first magazine cover. If you look at the documentary, he's being interviewed for that cover. But this is the first magazine cover that he had before he even blew up. But just being able to meet, all these different artists and different people set the stage for me to be able to collaborate with them on the music. One of the first people I ran into when I was in Atlanta was SMK. If you're not sure who that is, SMK is a Memphis producer, Memphis legend, who produced for people like E40 and Al Capone, and he done work with A-Ball and MJG and a lot of other underground acts as well. But been around, he was just one of my OGs from the hood. I met him through these people that were working on a compilation. So I sat down and let him hear one of my songs, and he chose one of my songs for the compilation because he liked the sound. So he was just like, man, yeah, that's tight. So from that point on, man, I always had a different respect for SMK. But he had two artists that he worked with back when I was growing up, Endo G and Lil Blunt. They were signed to Luke Records back in the mid-90s. They came out with the album. I'm not sure, I think it's called The Antidote. When they dropped their single, Blame It on the Funk, it used to play on the box. I don't know if you know what the box is, but those in the South probably know what the box is. But they used to play it on the box all the time. So I would sit there and record all these different videos off the box and off Yo MTV Raps and all that. But a lot of Southern artists wasn't on Yo MTV Raps and BET at that time. I would just record all these songs and all these videos, and I would just watch that stuff over and over. But after that, SMK, he moved on to some other projects, and Lil Blunt ended up working with one of the guys from the compilation. They was putting out some more projects on different artists, and they heard some of my tracks and they wanted to work with me. So I ended up producing for Lil Blunt and working on his album, and we had a lot of fun. We stayed in the studio all night, just laughing and joking. We had a lot of fun working on those albums, and through both of them, I met Endo G. And so Endo G came through, and y'all might know Endo G from the Remember Me Ballin' collaboration he did with 3 6 Mafia. He collaborated with me on one of my mixtapes and one of the earlier things that I dropped. When you grow up listening to these guys and then you work with them, you get a different respect for what they do and how they do it. Then from that, the same guys that I was working with, which was Fire Records, it was an older guy named Bill Davis, rest in peace. He introduced me to Sammy Sam, which is an Atlanta legend. The crazy part about it is, when I was in school, I think I met Sam over at Patchwork Studios outside in the parking lot. They was outside playing the music, out loud, and we was just walking by. I was at school at the time. He was just like, come here, listen to this. So I'm listening. He probably don't even know this. I'm listening to it, and I was like, yeah, that's hard. And I didn't really know much about him at that time, but I knew he was an Atlanta legend. Like, he was one of the first guys with him and Raheem and Kilo. They was the first guys in Atlanta doing their thing when I got here. I ended up doing a whole album on Sammy Sam. After that, I don't know what happened with the label he was working with before, but I ended up working on 2 projects with him. And, from that day forth, he respected me as one of his peers. Whenever he hear my name, he know I had the heat, or I had the beats, or, the right sound for what he was looking for. Then from that, I met Kingpin, Skinny Pimp, and a couple other artists from the M. And, just ended up naturally working together because they heard Big Yo, the one who got that sound. He got that quality you need. You need to go down there and mess with him. He down in Atlanta. Go down there and mess with him. So, I didn't really have a studio at the time. I used to work out of the Fire Record Studio. It was downtown. And so I made, I had a relationship with the owners, and they would let me use the studio. So I record different people, and I just learned as much as I could from different artists, and I took a little bit from everybody. How I met the South Circle from Suave House, I happened to call Mr. Mike. I had an old album that he had, and it was a new album at the time, but I didn't know anything about it. It just kind of came out. This is after he left Suave House. So I called the number on the back of the album, and just so happened it was him. He answered the phone. So back then, I remember calling numbers on the back of the CDs, and people would actually answer the phone. I remember talking to Baby before they got the Cash Money deal with Universal. He was like, "I'm getting on the plane. I have to call you back later." And I was like, "Man," but he actually answers the phone. So after I talked to him on the phone, I sat down with him, let him hear some tracks, and he was like, "Yeah, we need to work." So he called Thorough. These guys, like I said, they was on Suave House, so I was already a fan of the whole clique. So I talked to Thorough on the phone. It was like, cool, let's do it, let's work. So Thorough came to Atlanta, he moved to Atlanta for a few months, and we just started working on music, like every day, just working on music. I got probably 20 songs, 25 songs that we worked on that, never came out, of course, because I was in the process of trying to learn all the different types of equipment. Wasn't no computer at the time. We was using tape machines, and then I moved over to digital around that time when I started working with these guys. So we worked on the project, and through them, that's where I met Tony Hickman, or y'all know her as Slim Goody, but she was another Suave House member, and she's been featured on all of a lot of A-Ball MJG's music, and a lot of the other cats on Suave House. And we all just kind of became, it was more like a family thing because we was around each other so much, and then you start to learn about people and some of the stuff that they go through and some of their life experiences, and you begin to build a bond with people. Now, some relationships are strictly transactional, meaning you meet them, they want a service, and that's it. They just want to come record with you. They just want to get the beat from you. They just want to get whatever they want to get from you, and that's it. But then some people you actually build a bond with, and you sit and talk to them, and y'all have a lot in common. You learn about their life. You meet their family members, and you meet people, that's close to them, and you just learn more about the person. And it's not about the persona. Sometimes you get some artists in here, and their egos are so big that you can't even get past the ego part, because they looking at you like you're nothing, like I'm just this kid from Memphis who happened to have a studio or got a drum machine or whatever. It's a give and take depending on who you working with. It's a give and take. Some artists you just can't work with. I don't care what you say or what you do, you won't be able to work with them. They ain't cool like that, Luckily, I've met some great people, I met some great people. I met some people that I wish I never met, Some people who only just want to take. They don't want to give anything, don't want to pay anything or nothing. In the end, when you start to build a foundation of who you want to be as far as an artist. Like I started off as just strictly rapping because I didn't have any equipment. I had to, build that up. I took whatever little money I had and I started investing, and that's how I started building. I started building from there. One of my first big checks came from Big Mason. I don't know if you guys remember Archie Episode. He had this song, We Ready, rest in peace. One of my biggest checks came from them, and I took that check and I flipped it into buying a keyboard, an MPC. And I had a small keyboard I was using, but I upgraded. And every time I get some money, I upgrade. One of the other guys who I forgot to mention was Tim Dog. A lot of people don't know who Tim Dog is, but Tim Dog had a feud with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, or he had a song called F Compton back in the day, in like the early 90s. And I met him through just Craigslist. He was looking for a graphic designer to do something, and I met him and Kool Keith. They was working on some independent projects, and I met him and I started doing graphic work with him, and I was whole situation that he had going on Dateline, happened after that. But in the beginning, Tim Dog was one of the people that I was cool with. I thought he was a cool guy. He act like he was looking out for me, because at the time I think I was going through some stuff and I wasn't working, and he was actually the reason that I got my passport. Like I bought my first passport dealing with Tim Dog because I was supposed to go on tour with him and Kool Keith and the other guy that they was in a group with. But long story short, some things ended up happening. Me and him kind of fell out, and then disagreed on some stuff, and their relationship just fizzled out. And it's okay that if some people come in your life and then they leave. Sometimes you learn, regardless of who it is, you're gonna learn something from them, whether it's good or bad. That's solely up to you. Somebody else who I looked up to, and I met him through Rolling Out. I used to meet a lot of artists, but used to write a column at Rolling Out magazine. Was Big Rube from the Dungeon family. I met Big Rube at Rolling Out. We did a song on my project. You can go and check out the project in the comments. And I always held him in high regard, because even when we talked, Big Rube was a deep thinker. He was a very smart guy, and I just kind of listened to him because he had been in this and been around this industry way longer than me. So when he came and did that collab with me, that was like gold. Shout out to Big Rube for that. A couple of other people that I worked with, Tom Ski Mask, Kingpin, Skinny Pimp, we got a couple of songs together. Working with him was just like, it was like gold at the time, you know what I mean? Cool Breeze from the Dungeon family. I used to do tracks for Cool Breeze, and I kind of lost touch with him over time, but it was cool just to vibe with him and work with different artists and become respected as a producer. I know Rocco has came to the studio a couple of times. Wicked from Ghetto Mafia, I met him through Sammy Sam. He was on Sam's project. Lil Jon came through and dropped a verse on Sam's project. I also met Glass Malone when I was living in California. I worked with an artist named Quiz. So I produced a song that he had on his album called Stay. I was living in California at the time. Being a fan can be a gift and a curse, because you can look at somebody a certain way and you think that they're gonna respect you as a person. But some of these artists just ain't good people, you know what I mean? You can like their music, but sometimes you gotta separate their music from who they are as a person, because they'll let their ego or their persona be in control. Being a fan, just make sure when you working with people that you are a fan of, you make them respect you. A lot of these guys that I work with, they had to respect me, because I didn't go into it acting like a fan. I didn't go into it, asking them a bunch of questions and asking them this and asking them that. And you know, once you get past the initial conversation or initial greeting, then sometimes you really start to peel back layers of who they are as a person. You know, because just remember, we all put our pants on the same way. And so I don't treat them any different from somebody else who ain't never sold a record in their life. So, you know, when I'm working with these guys, you know, I might be a fan, but it don't really show. You know what I mean? I'm not one of those people who just kind of show emotion like that. You know, I'm real laid back, and that's how I carry myself around pretty much everybody. I'm even tempered pretty much all the time. In a nutshell, whenever you working with people that you idolize or that you grow up with, or that you grew up listening to, or that you just hold in high regard, sometimes you gotta kind of knock that down. And what I mean by knock that down, I mean you gotta kind of lower that bar. Because if you meet somebody and let's say, you know, you're a really big fan, but you know, you don't really show it, but they treat you like shit. So if they treat you like shit, then that's gonna mess with your mind, and you're gonna start to pick apart certain things about their music that you don't like, or you're gonna start to just look at them in a whole nother light. And then when people ask you about them, you know, you might not have the greatest things to say, you know. And then when you go back and listen to their old music and listen to some of the stuff they say, you're gonna scrutinize everything that they've done prior to meeting you. So yeah, it's a gift and a curse sometimes to be a fan of people that you meet, because everybody ain't cool. Like when I met E40 for the first time, man, he one of the coolest dudes I ever met. He treated me like a person, you know. He didn't treat me like I'm just some dude in the studio. You know, he treated me like a person. And so I can that's why I always bring his name up, because whenever I meet people and they leave an impression on me, then, you know, I try to hold those people in high regard, because I don't really have high expectations for people like that. I really don't. And also creating relationships with these artists. When you create relationships with the artists outside of music, like that will take you further than just having a strictly transactional relationship where you just offering a service, you making a beat for them and they pay you. You know what I mean? Like sometimes just, you know, being cool with people, like Thorough from the South Circle, he's like my big brother. You know, Mr. Mike, we don't have that same relationship. You know, I respect Mike's music and I respect Thorough music, but we have two different relationships, you know, as far as how I deal with them. And you're gonna deal with people differently, you know, across the board. My relationship with Tony is different from the relationship I had with Thorough. But me and Tony, you know, we done stuff we've done shows together. We in a group right now together. So, you know, these relationships can take you further, and people will respect you in different ways depending on how your relationship is built. Whenever you work with people that you admire, just make them respect you. I think that will take you further than being a groupie or a fan. Well, that's it for me. I hope y'all enjoyed the content. Like and subscribe. You can reach me at Marshall_Law_media on Instagram. And you can go to my website at www.mlmediallc.com. Be on the lookout for more content. Big Yo Baby, I'm out.
Martial Law Productions.